I think one thing that's kind of sad is that the Western misconceptions about China today are pretty similar to those when I came in '88. It hasn't been a lot of change, but they're similar to what they were 100 years ago. That's why when Xi Jinping was governor 20 years ago in Fujian, he said that Chinese have come to know the world better, but the world still doesn't know China. For example, I was in Taiwan. I was in the military in Taiwan for 2 years. I really thought that China was the big threat to the world. But that's because fake news is nothing new. In 1899, just before the 20th century began, in that year, Lord Beresford in England wrote a book called The Breakup of China. It was a catalog of all the Chinese provinces and cities and all the resources the West could get from it. I mean, they're really talking about taking China to pieces, and I get this, you get this. And in the same year, two other books they published was China, the Yellow Peril, and China at War with the World. They're picturing China as the great threat to the world, which is ironic because they were tearing China to pieces, forcing opium on China. Chinese have never gone to a distant country to take over, and yet they were saying China was the threat. It was pretty ironic, but China was a threat to the West because they thought China was finally going to stand up and stop the easy money. That was fake news then, and today is the same thing. They still are paraded, just like in the 70s when I was in Taiwan, the 80s when I first came, and today they're saying China is a threat to the world. China's destroying the world order. Well, what's a world order built on? I mean, it wasn't necessarily a good order anyway. And so the media is very powerful. When the Second Opium War, the media was used even back then. The British leaders, the Parliament, the entire British Parliament unanimously opposed the Second Opium War. So the Prime Minister just dissolved Parliament, and the media said we're going to war against China because of the honor of the Queen. They did something bad, and people believed it, and today people believe it. It's not much changed in really 180 years. So that's why I think it's so important that we really work, not just government promotion, but that a lot of people get involved in telling China's story to help foreigners see what is the truth here. So I think the most important thing China will do, besides telling more materials about China, is just its actions in the world. I mean, the world really fears China. But I understand why they fear China, because, I mean, look at history. 500 and something years, how have the Western countries, I tell my students that the Chinese are the best business people in history because throughout history, Chinese have done real business. They've never had Beijing military navy behind them. Chinese in China and Southeast Asia, they just did real business, whereas for 500 years, Western businessmen have always had the military and the governments behind them. So that's how the West has done things for over 500 years, and I don't think they can really understand that Chinese throughout history have not done colonialism and these kind of things, and they've just done real, pure business, peaceful business. But they can't believe a country this big can be so different. So I think China's actions, peaceful coexistence, peaceful development, peaceful helping other countries, I think that's the greatest China story. And in the West, and especially in the United States, for them everything is win-lose, win-lose. And the U.S. has to be number one at everything. And then Germany, France, and England, the former colonial powers, have to be right behind them, and Japan. And they see China as catching up as a threat to them being number one. Why does everybody have to be number one? Why can't they just coexist? Harvard Business Review in 2014 said that 300 years ago, China and India had 2/3 of the world GDP. And Harvard Business Review said, before the first Opium War, the Chinese economy was more open and more market-driven than the economies of Europe. So they talk about this open economy, free trade, but they've never done it. They've always had colonialism and military intervention and regime change. China has never done that. But they fear China will do that. And so they've tried for 180 years to contain China. So I think the rest of the world is going to have to see the fact that they can't contain China, they can't stop it, but that doesn't make China a threat.